For 5 long years, this woman was branded as barren, infertile, useless, nothing more than a stain on her husband's proud family. He turned away from her touch. His mother's eyes dripped with disdain. Family dinners became silent wounds, every word a reminder of her failure. And, in the end, Robert threw Monica out like she was nothing, discarded without mercy. She stepped into the cold, stormy night. Tears mixed with rain, her suitcase dragging behind her like dead weight. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, but no one spoke. That was the moment her worth as a wife, as a woman, was erased in their eyes, simply because she could not give him a child. Yet, on the very day of their divorce, Robert walked into the Boston courthouse, his suit pressed, his smile triumphant. He believed he had won, that he was finally free of his burden. But then, the courtroom doors swung open. The sound of high heels echoed. Monica stepped inside, her face calm, her posture unshaken, and beneath her long coat, a swollen belly, undeniable. The courtroom froze. Robert's confidence shattered. Every gaze turned to the woman once dismissed as useless. What happened in the time after he abandoned her? Before the courtroom silence, there had been a different picture. Monica and Robert were once seen as the perfect couple. They owned a modern townhouse in a quiet Boston suburb. The walls were bright, the furniture polished, every detail spotless. Robert was a rising name in banking. Monica worked in marketing, admired for her ideas and energy. Together they seemed unstoppable, living the American dream. Neighbors smiled at them. Colleagues envied them. On the outside, everything looked complete, but behind the doors of that polished home, there was silence. No sound of a baby's cry. No tiny footsteps running across the wooden floor. The house was neat, but it was empty. At dinner, Monica often gazed at the empty chair at the table. She imagined a child sitting there, laughing, spilling juice. She smiled through it, but her heart ached. Robert would hold her hand and whisper, "It will happen. Just give it time." His words carried comfort, but also doubt. The world saw perfection. Only Monica felt the hollow space. Only she counted the years slipping away without the child she longed for. 5 years passed, and still no child came. Month after month, Monica faced the same crushing silence. Every test, every doctor's visit ended in disappointment. She sat in cold waiting rooms, staring at charts, praying for a different result. She kept the papers in a folder, hidden in her desk. Each report said the same thing. Each word weighed heavier than the last. Still, she clung to hope. She lit candles, whispered prayers, marked calendars. At first, Robert stayed close. He told her not to worry. He held her shoulders and said, "When the time is right, it will happen." But as months stretched into years, his voice changed. The warmth faded, the patience wore thin. Monica noticed the sighs he tried to hide, the way his hand slipped away faster each night. He no longer asked about her appointments. He no longer believed. She cried alone in the bathroom, muffling her sobs with a towel. She wanted to be strong, but the emptiness kept growing. The dream of motherhood was slipping further from her grasp, and Robert, once her partner, was starting to see her less as his wife and more as the reason for his disappointment. Sunday dinners with Robert's family became a battlefield. His mother would set the table, sigh loudly, and glance at Monica's empty hands. "A family is not complete without children," she would mutter, her voice sharp enough to cut. His sisters whispered to each other, smiling cruelly when Monica dropped a spoon or made a mistake. Their giggles felt like daggers. Every remark carried the same poison. Maybe Robert married the wrong woman. Monica sat quietly, pushing food around her plate. She forced a smile, but her chest tightened with each word. Her appetite disappeared, but her shame grew. Robert once defended her. He would snap back at his mother, "Enough, she is my wife." But over time, his voice fell silent. He no longer shielded her. He let the insults hang in the air. Monica left those dinners with tears pressing behind her eyes. She cried in the car, turning her face toward the window so no one would see. The laughter from the house followed her out like a curse. The woman who once felt proud beside her husband now felt invisible. She carried the family's scorn like a hidden wound, bleeding quietly where no one cared to look. The turning point came slowly. At first, Robert's frustration was small, hidden behind sighs and silence. But with every passing year, the silence grew heavier. One evening, after another failed test, he slammed his hand on the table. 5 years, Monica. 5 years and nothing. What good are you to me if you cannot give me a child?" His words struck harder than any slap. Monica froze, her fork clattering onto the plate. She searched his face for the man she had married, but his eyes were cold. After that, the distance widened. He stayed out later. He came home smelling of alcohol, sometimes perfume that was not hers. Their bed became a place of silence, 2 bodies turned away, miles apart. Every argument circled back to the same wound: her worth, her inability, his resentment. She tried to remind him of their love. She pleaded for counseling, for patience, for adoption. But Robert no longer listened. He measured life only in heirs, in blood, in legacy. Monica felt herself shrinking under the weight of his blame. She was no longer his partner. In his eyes, she was the barrier between him and the life he thought he deserved. Monica refused to give up. She searched for answers, for solutions, for hope. One evening, she sat across from Robert, her hands trembling, and said softly, "We could adopt. There are children who need families. We could give them love." Robert shook his head, his jaw tight. "Not my blood. Not my name. That isn't family." Another night, she suggested therapy, a chance to speak with someone together. He laughed bitterly. "I don't need therapy. You need to fix yourself." She looked into new treatments, doctors, anything science could offer. She brought home brochures, highlighted pages. Robert barely glanced at them. "I don't want experiments. I want a real heir." Each attempt collapsed under his pride. Each idea was crushed by the same wall. Robert's worth, in his own eyes, was measured by legacy, by children who would carry his name. Without that, he felt small. So he made Monica feel smaller. She carried the weight of his disappointment every day. Her hope turned into exhaustion. Her suggestions turned into silence. And the more she tried to reach him, the more Robert turned away, guarding his pride like a shield against the woman who only wanted to save their marriage. The house grew quieter with every week. Robert began staying late at work. At least, that was what he said. Monica waited by the window, watching headlights pass, but his car did not appear. When he finally came home, his tie was loosened, his eyes dull from drink. Sometimes there was a faint trace of perfume that did not belong to her. She asked where he had been. He dismissed her with a shrug. "Meetings, don't start." The gap between them widened into an ocean. Dinner went cold on the table. The bed was untouched until long after midnight. Monica lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her chest ached with suspicion, but she had no proof. Only scents, silences, and the way he turned his phone face down on the counter. She pressed her hands together in prayer, begging for strength. She told herself not to accuse without certainty, but deep inside, she knew. Something was breaking beyond repair. The air in the townhouse grew heavy, thick with things unsaid. Even the ticking of the clock felt louder, counting down to a collapse neither of them would stop. It happened one night after weeks of silence. Robert stumbled in late, smelling of whiskey. Monica stood in the kitchen, her arms crossed, her voice trembling. "Where were you, Robert? I can smell her. I can feel it. Is there someone else?" He slammed the fridge shut, his face twisting with rage. "Don't you dare accuse me. You can't even do the one thing a woman should do." Her breath caught, her knees weakened. She whispered, "I've tried everything. I've given you all of me." His words cut like knives. "If you were a real woman, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." The kitchen fell silent, the echo of his cruelty hanging in the air. Monica clutched the counter to stay upright. Her heart cracked, her spirit bleeding. She wanted to scream, she wanted to leave, but no sound came, only the hot sting of tears down her cheeks. Robert turned away, his anger still burning. She stood alone, shattered by the man who once vowed to protect her. That night, something inside Monica broke completely. She was no longer his partner in his eyes. She was his failure, his burden, his scapegoat. The breaking point came with thunder. Rain lashed against the windows, rattling the glass. Robert's voice rose above the storm. "I've wasted enough time. Pack your things. Leave. You're barren, Monica. I can't waste another day with you." The words struck harder than the lightning outside. Monica's breath shook as she gathered her few belongings. Every dress, every photo frame felt heavier than stone. Tears streamed down her face. She begged, once, softly, "Robert, please, don't throw away everything we built." He slammed his fist on the counter. "Get out!" The door slammed behind her, the sound final as a gavel. She stepped into the storm, rain soaking her hair, plastering her clothes to her skin. She pulled her suitcase down the street, puddles splashing under her feet. Her body trembled with cold, but her chest ached far worse. Windows glowed along the street. Behind curtains, neighbors peeked. No one opened a door. No one spoke. Each step was a march into the unknown. Her marriage was gone. Her dream of a family shattered. The rain washed over her, but nothing could wash away the feeling of being cast aside, broken, unwanted. Monica walked through the storm, her suitcase dragging behind her. The wheels caught on cracks in the pavement. Her shoes filled with water. Her hair clung to her face. Behind her, the house still glowed with light. Ahead, only darkness stretched. A neighbor's curtain shifted. Someone looked out, their eyes meeting hers for a moment. Then the curtain closed again. Silence. Indifference. Her chest tightened. She was not only abandoned by her husband. She was abandoned by everyone who once smiled at her on sunny mornings. Now she was a stranger to them. Invisible. She pulled the suitcase harder, her arms aching. The rain blurred the world, but not her pain. She whispered to herself, over and over, "I will survive. I have to survive." The storm roared, but her steps continued. Each one heavier, yet also defiant. If no one would see her worth, she would carry it alone. That night marked the lowest point of her life. Monica was not just walking away from a house. She was walking away from the life she had tried so hard to build, into a future unknown, with nothing but her wounded heart and a suitcase full of memories. Monica found a small apartment in downtown Boston. It was nothing like the house she had left behind. The walls were bare, the floors scratched, the air smelled faintly of dust, but it was hers. She placed her suitcase by the door and stood in silence. The rooms echoed with emptiness, yet there was freedom in that silence. No harsh voices, no judgmental eyes. Slowly, she began to make the space her own. She painted one wall a soft shade of green. She hung string lights across the ceiling, their glow warm against the night. A second-hand bookshelf filled with her favorite novels stood in the corner. Every object she placed carried meaning, a quiet declaration that she was still alive, still here. She brewed tea for one. She sat by the window, watching city lights reflect on the river. Her heart still ached. But this small apartment was a beginning, not a reminder of failure, but a canvas waiting for her own touch. For the first time in years, Monica could breathe without fear. This space was imperfect, but it belonged to her alone. Nights stretched long inside the new apartment. The city buzzed outside, but inside there was only silence. She cooked meals for one, setting the plate gently on the table. Each bite reminded her of the dinners she once shared, the laughter that was gone, the warmth that had vanished. She left half her food untouched, appetite stolen by grief. She washed a single fork, a single cup, and the sound echoed too loud. When darkness fell, loneliness pressed harder. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the string lights casting faint shadows. Her body trembled with sobs she tried to stifle. The pillow grew damp with tears, but she hugged it tightly, as if it could replace the comfort she had lost. Every creak in the hallway reminded her she was alone. No one would come through the door. No one would hold her hand. Yet, in that silence, something stirred. It was not hope yet, but the fragile seed of strength. She realized that she had survived another day, and though her nights were heavy with sorrow, she was still standing. And that mattered. It was during one of her evening walks that she first saw him. The community center down the block was busy that night. Volunteers moved boxes, stacked supplies. Among them was David. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with ease. His hands steady, his presence calm. A box slipped from another volunteer's grip. David caught it quickly, setting it down with a gentle laugh. Monica noticed the warmth in his smile, the way his eyes softened when he spoke. Their first words were small. She commented on the weather. He nodded, his tone light. "Boston winters never go easy, do they?" It was ordinary, nothing dramatic. But as she walked home later that night, his voice lingered. His smile stayed with her. It had been so long since someone had spoken to her without judgment, without pity. Just simple kindness. She did not know his name yet, but she remembered his presence. In the midst of her broken world, that brief encounter felt like a spark, a reminder that not every face would turn away, not every man would see her as Barren. Days passed, and then she saw him again. At the farmer's market, he stood by a stall of fresh apples. Their eyes met, and he smiled as if he had been expecting her. Another time she walked into a cafe, the scent of roasted beans filling the air. He sat at a corner table, a book in his hands. He looked up, offered a nod. Noticing her hesitation, he pulled out the chair opposite, an unspoken invitation. They exchanged simple words: weather, books, the city's noise, small talk, but easy. Monica felt no weight in his company, no pressure to explain herself. On another evening, she walked by the River Charles, the city lights shimmering. David appeared again, hands in his pockets, steps unhurried. He greeted her with the same calm warmth. The encounters seemed unplanned, yet each one added a thread. Thin at first, then stronger. Monica began to look forward to them, though she would not admit it. In those small moments, the world felt less empty, and the silence she carried in her heart eased, if only for a while. One evening, they sat on a bench overlooking the river. The air was cool, the city glowing behind them. David asked softly, "Are you okay?" His voice carried no demand, only concern. Monica hesitated. Then the words poured out. She told him about the years of waiting, about the whispers at family dinners, about Robert's anger, the nights of blame, and finally about the word that haunted her, Barren. Her voice shook as she said it aloud. The shame clung to her like chains. She lowered her eyes, waiting for judgment. But David did not flinch. He did not look away. He simply said, "You're not broken, Monica. You never were." The words sank deep, echoing through the hollow places inside her. She felt the weight shift, if only a little. For the first time in years, someone had seen her not as a failure, but as a woman still whole. Tears welled, but they were different now, not only of grief, but of release. In that moment, she realized kindness could heal, and that maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she thought. Their walks grew longer, their conversations deeper. David listened without rushing her words. When she stumbled, he waited. When she cried, he offered silence, not solutions. For years, Monica had lived under sharp voices and cold judgment. Now she found warmth in his presence. He never measured her by what she lacked. He saw her as a woman, not a burden. One evening, they laughed at something small, a street performer juggling on the corner. The sound startled her. It had been years since laughter rose from her chest so freely. David smiled at her, not the act. Her joy seemed to bring him peace. Days once heavy began to feel lighter. She woke up with more energy, her steps less weary. The city lights no longer seemed lonely. Her heart, once locked, began to open. This was not the fiery passion of youth. It was steadier, softer, like a blanket against winter air. A safe place she had never known before. For the first time since her marriage crumbled, Monica felt alive again. And she realized that sometimes love begins not with thunder, but with quiet care. As months passed, Monica noticed small shifts in her body. At first, she brushed them aside. Fatigue weighed on her even after full nights of sleep. Food she once enjoyed turned her stomach. Then came the missed cycle. She stared at the calendar, her heart pounding. 1 week late, then 2. Memories of disappointment flooded back. Every test she had taken before, every tear shed alone. She feared to hope again. Hope had betrayed her too many times. Still, the signs grew harder to ignore. She pressed a hand to her stomach, whispering into the empty room. Could it be? She told David in fragments, her voice trembling. He listened, his hand steady on hers. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he said. That night, she bought a test and placed it on the bathroom counter. The small box felt heavy in her hand, heavier than all her fears. She stared at it under the dim light, afraid of both answers. Something inside her whispered that her life was about to change, and this time the change might not end in despair. The bathroom was silent, only the sound of water dripping from a loose tap. Monica held her breath as the test strip slowly filled. Her hands shook so badly she had to set it down. Minutes stretched like hours. She stared at the counter, afraid to look. When she finally lifted her eyes, she froze. 2 clear lines. Not faint, not uncertain, undeniable. Her knees gave out. She slid to the floor, her back against the wall. Tears streamed down, but not of sorrow this time. She laughed and sobbed at once, the sound raw and unrestrained. David rushed in, kneeling beside her. She held up the test, her voice broken with disbelief. "It's real. It's real." He pulled her into his arms, pressing his forehead against hers. "We're going to be okay, Monica. This is your life. Our life. It's just beginning." For 5 years, she had carried the weight of the word barren. Now, in her trembling hands, she held proof that the label had never defined her. Life was growing inside her, and with it, a piece of herself she thought was lost forever. The weeks that followed were filled with new rhythms: doctor visits, ultrasounds, gentle kicks beneath her ribs. Each appointment David attended, never missing one. He held her hand as the heartbeat echoed through the room, steady and strong. At home, they painted the nursery a soft yellow. David assembled a crib, cursing under his breath at the stubborn screws, making her laugh. They picked out tiny clothes, folded them neatly into drawers. Monica stood before the mirror, tracing the curve of her belly. She no longer saw herself as broken. Every movement inside her body was proof of resilience, proof of life. Evenings were spent planning names, reading aloud children's stories, imagining the future. David spoke to her belly in a soft voice, promising love and protection. She felt peace in moments she never thought she would know. Her laughter returned, her steps light again. She walked through the city with a quiet pride. The shadows of the past grew fainter. For the first time in years, Monica was not defined by pain. She was a mother-to-be, and her heart glowed with the joy she had almost given up on. While Monica's life bloomed, Robert remained blind to it all. 6 months after he had driven her out, he filed for divorce. To him, it was a formality, a clean cut to erase what he called a wasted marriage. He walked into the courthouse with confidence, carrying polished documents. His lawyer assured him everything was simple. No contest, no surprises. Robert's pride grew as he thought of his freedom. No more awkward dinners with his family. No more shame of a barren wife. He pictured himself standing tall, the victor who had moved on. He told colleagues he would soon be unbound. He smiled when they clapped him on the back. They never knew the cruelty behind his grin. Meanwhile, across the city, Monica's belly grew rounder each day. Her laughter filled her small apartment, her life renewed. Robert never imagined it. He still believed she was broken. He still thought she carried nothing but emptiness. The truth was coming for him, and it would shatter the image he had built of himself, the pride he wore like armor. But Robert, in his arrogance, saw none of it. The morning was clear, the air crisp with the chill of early spring. Robert arrived at the Boston courthouse in his finest suit. Dark navy, freshly pressed, paired with polished leather shoes that clicked against the marble floor. He carried himself like a man in control, every step firm, every gesture rehearsed. He adjusted his tie, checked his cufflinks, and gave a small nod to his lawyer. Inside, he signed his name at the clerk's desk with steady hands. The pen glided easily, as though this was just another deal to be closed. He smirked at the thought. In his mind, today was not about loss, it was about freedom. Freedom from shame, from whispers, from the weight of a wife who had failed him. He walked into the courtroom and looked around with confidence. He expected Monica would not even appear. She had been humiliated too deeply, he thought. She would hide, avoid the shame of facing him again. Robert straightened his posture, shoulders square. This was his stage. He believed the outcome had already been written. A clean victory, a final chapter. He sat down, ready to watch her absence prove his pride correct. The courtroom was quiet, ordinary. A few spectators sat scattered across the benches, waiting for their own cases. The judge entered, his robe rustling as he moved to his chair. The gavel tapped once, steady and firm. Robert sat at the petitioner's table, his lawyer leaning close. Whispers filled his ear, reminders, strategy, assurance. But Robert barely listened. His eyes flicked toward the door once, then away. He convinced himself she would not come. The judge's voice carried calmly. "We will hear the case of Williams versus Williams. Is the petitioner ready to proceed?" Robert gave a sharp nod, the corner of his mouth lifting. His lawyer rose, clearing his throat. The process was smooth, expected. Papers shuffled, legal terms spoken. Robert leaned back, exuding control. The room felt almost dull in its routine. A hearing like many others, another divorce to be finalized. Robert's chest swelled with quiet triumph. To him, it was already over. He imagined the gavel falling, the signature completed, the marriage dismissed with a few strokes of ink. He never noticed the subtle shift in the room, the hush in the gallery, the way people turned toward the back, waiting. The doors opened with a slow creak. Every head turned. The scrape of heels echoed on the polished floor. Monica stepped into the courtroom, her posture steady, her face calm. She wore a long coat, but it could not hide the truth. Beneath the fabric, her belly was round, unmistakable. The swell of pregnancy clear with every step she took. A gasp rippled through the spectators. Whispers rose, sharp and urgent. The court reporter paused, pen suspended in midair. Even the clerk froze, eyes wide. Robert's smirk vanished. His body went rigid. His hand tightened around the pen until it slipped, clattering to the floor. The judge tapped the gavel, calling for order, but the air was already thick with disbelief. Monica kept walking, heels striking the floor in steady rhythm. She did not look at Robert. She did not look at anyone. She simply walked forward, each step a declaration. A woman once discarded, now carrying life for all to see. The silence grew heavy, almost unbearable. The courtroom waited, suspended between shock and revelation, and Robert, for the first time, felt the ground shift beneath him. Robert's world tilted in a single heartbeat. His chest tightened, his breath uneven. The papers before him blurred, lines of ink swimming on the page. He tried to reach for the pen on the floor, but his hand shook. The sound of whispers pierced him, each one like an accusation. The judge's voice cut through the noise. "Order in the court!" But order was impossible. Robert's lawyer leaned close, whispering sharply, "Pull yourself together. Stay calm." The words barely registered. All he could see was Monica, her calm expression, her hand resting lightly on the curve of her stomach. The proof that everything he had shouted at her, every cruel word, was collapsing. His throat closed as he tried to speak. No sound came out. Sweat beaded at his temples. His eyes darted around the room, seeking escape, finding none. The man who once measured worth by control now sat powerless. The pride in his suit, in his polished shoes, meant nothing. The courtroom was no longer his stage. It was his reckoning. Robert gripped the table edge, knuckles white as if it could hold him steady. But the truth had already torn through. Robert's body betrayed him. His knees buckled. Before he knew it, he was on the floor, his lawyer tugging at his arm in panic. Gasps filled the room. Some spectators leaned forward, eyes wide, unable to look away. Robert reached out toward Monica, his voice breaking. "Please, please come back. Don't do this. That child, it's mine, isn't it?" His words tumbled out, jagged and raw. The man who once barked orders now begged in front of strangers. Tears blurred his vision, streaking his cheeks. "We can fix this. I'll change. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me empty-handed." Monica sat still, her back straight, her gaze calm. She offered no comfort, no answer. Robert's voice grew louder, desperate, spilling into sobs. "I was wrong. I blamed you. I called you Barren. But please, forgive me, please." The judge struck the gavel sharply. "Mr. Williams, control yourself. Rise immediately." But Robert barely heard. The courtroom no longer saw a powerful man. They saw a husband undone by his own cruelty, crawling for a woman he had cast aside. The role had reversed, and Robert was drowning in the weight of his own regret. Robert knelt before her, his voice cracking, his hands reaching. The courtroom was silent except for his pleas. Monica's eyes, steady and unflinching, finally met his. Her voice cut through the air, calm and cold. "You don't get to undo it now." The words landed like stone. There was no anger in her tone, no heat, only finality. Robert's breath caught. He shook his head violently, as though denial could change truth. "Please, Monica, I was blind. I see it now. We can start over. We can—" But Monica did not move. Her hand rested on her belly, her posture firm. She had begged once, years ago in the storm. This time she had no reason to. The silence that followed was louder than his cries. For the first time, Robert understood. She was beyond his reach. He had thrown her out when she was most vulnerable. Now she stood stronger than ever. His desperation could not erase the cruelty he had chosen. Monica's calm refusal was not revenge. It was truth. The end he had created with his own hands. The judge's gavel struck again, sharp against the wood. "Mr. Williams, control yourself. Return to your seat." But Robert could not stand. Tears ran unchecked down his face. His polished image shattered in front of strangers. His lawyer bent down, whispering harshly, "You're embarrassing yourself. Stop this now." He tried to pull Robert to his feet, but Robert resisted, clutching at the floor. The gallery stirred with uneasy murmurs. Some shook their heads in disgust. Others whispered to one another, their eyes fixed on the broken man who had once been so proud. Robert sobbed openly, his voice hoarse. "Please, don't take this from me. Please." Every word echoed in the chamber, each plea a reminder of the arrogance that had led him here. The man who once demanded respect now lay humbled before the very woman he had called Barren. The whispers grew louder. His shame was no longer private. It was public, undeniable, irreversible. Robert lowered his head into his hands, unable to face the stairs. His power, his pride, his control, all gone. What remained was only a man exposed by his own cruelty, crumbling under the weight of truth. The heavy doors at the back of the courtroom opened once more. Heads turned instinctively. David stepped inside. He walked with quiet confidence, his blazer neat, his steps unhurried. The room shifted as he moved forward, calm but certain. He did not look at the murmuring crowd. He looked only at Monica. When he reached her side, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. It was simple, tender, but it spoke louder than any words. The declaration was clear. He stood with her, and always would. Monica's eyes softened for the first time that morning. Her hand brushed his arm, a silent acknowledgement. Robert's face drained of color. He stared at the scene as though struck by lightning. The reality hit him harder than her refusal. She was not alone. She was loved. The courtroom gasped again, some in awe, others in quiet admiration. The contrast was stark. Robert on his knees, broken. David standing tall, steady. In that moment, the past and the future stood side by side, and everyone in the room saw clearly which one Monica had chosen. The judge tapped his gavel again, but the sound faded under the weight of what came next. Monica rose slowly, her movements deliberate. She placed both hands on her stomach, drawing every gaze to the truth she carried. Her eyes met Robert's, steady and unyielding. Her voice rang clear. "This child is proof I was never the problem." Gasps filled the chamber. The words struck with undeniable force. Years of accusations reversed in an instant. Robert's lips parted, but no sound emerged. His knees gave way. He sank fully to the floor, trembling, pale, undone. His lawyer tried to steady him, but Robert pushed weakly against his grip. The man who had once towered in pride now collapsed, stripped of dignity. Spectators exchanged shocked glances. Some shook their heads, others whispered with pity, but no one doubted the truth. Monica stood tall, her strength radiating. David at her side, her child within her. She no longer needed to defend herself. The proof lived and breathed inside her body. Robert bowed his head, his pride shattered beyond repair. The final blow had landed, and it came not from anger, but from truth. The gavel struck, but its echo was distant, powerless against what had already unfolded. Monica rose with quiet strength, David by her side. They walked together toward the doors, her steps steady, her head lifted. She did not glance back. There was nothing left behind her worth holding on to. Robert remained on the floor, his body shaking, his face pale with despair. Everything he had once believed, every word he had used to wound her, now lay in ruins around him. The man who had demanded control was left with none. The heavy doors closed, and the silence that followed felt final. It was not only the end of a marriage, it was the end of a lie, that her worth had ever been tied to his pride. And in that silence, a truth emerged. Pride destroys. Cruelty leaves scars. But strength, love, and patience can rebuild a life more beautiful than before. If you were Monica, what would you have done? Would you forgive, or would you walk away as she did, carrying your dignity into a new life? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories that remind us all, your worth is never defined by anyone else,